Hey, welcome to Politics as usual. I'm your co-host, Big Fred. I'm sticking with it, following through there.
And I'm just Cat.
There it is. We gonna get a nickname for you. It's all right. New year just started. We catching up. We catching. Today we got to talk about what's going on in the world, particularly in the United States of America, and other things. Up in Minneapolis, ICE murdered a woman in cold blood. And that video continues to relate. We're gonna talk about all the ins and outs of that, from what happened to the way the administration and its cronies were rushing to develop a narrative that they knew was false, so on and so forth. I also want to take some time in this episode to talk about ways to sort of organize and combat ICE. It's one of the main reasons I think like we started this show and want to do it is that we both, Kat and I, actually do this work in real life. So not only want to sort of add sort of educational value, but also just, I mean, not just rather, narrative value, but also some educational organizing. So, Kat, I'm gonna turn it over to you since I just have a keen sense of understanding and feeling that you've got a pulse on just what's taking place in Minneapolis and Portland and other places in the last days.
Yeah. I've been pretty consumed with it. Like I said before we started, I made myself notes to stick to it so I don't just start screaming for an hour. Instead, I'll just scream for like 20 minutes. But let's get right into it. I imagine that most people that listen to the show already understand what happened in Minneapolis. The 10-second overview is that Wednesday in Minneapolis, an ICE agent who has since been identified shot Renee Nicole Good, a mother and legal observer, 3 times in the face. She was in her vehicle, and there is video circulating. It's some of the most heart-wrenching video I think I've seen. I don't think I've felt the only other time I can recall feeling as physically ill was when I watched the video of George Floyd, which unfortunately occurred just 4 blocks from where Renee Good was murdered. Anyway, there are multiple angles of this video. It is very, very easy, and this comes into play later. It is incredibly easy to see. You don't even have to slow it down and move it frame by frame. None of the officers who were on the scene at that point were ever in any type of imminent danger at all. Renee Good did not pose an immediate threat to them. As a legal observer and as a community advocate, she posed a threat to the state, an existential threat to their power. And I want to be super clear, that is why she was murdered, because these assholes have been told that they can operate with, and I'm going to quote our vice president, absolute immunity, not qualified, which is a technical term, absolute immunity. Renee Good's murder was the 9th by ICE since September of last year. Last year, more than 30 people died in ICE custody. We don't know how they died. And that is to say nothing of the thousands more who have been kidnapped and disappeared in the broader ICE, CBP, DHS system. A lot of people who were in the CCOT facility, or allegedly a CCOT facility in Florida, more popularly known as Alligator Alcatraz. I refuse to call it that. I'm not going to like give it any cute little names or anything like that. It is a concentration camp is what it is. We don't know where these people are. Yesterday, so we're recording this on Friday. Yesterday was Thursday. 24 hours after Renee Good was murdered by ICE agents in Minneapolis. In Portland, 2 people were shot by, I haven't looked since last night, but the last that I heard, and we'll follow up with this as we need to, was they were thinking it was Border Patrol. This happened in the Hazelwood part of Portland, Oregon, which is very diverse, very low income, 9 miles away from the ICE facility. So this is a pattern. Obviously, we know that. What I want to lead with is actually with a question with a question that my daughter was asking me earlier this week. Wednesday night, I went into her room and I asked if she had seen the video because she has social media. I mean, she's got age restricted accounts and all of that, but like, so I just asked her, I was like, "Hey, has that video come across your feed at all?" And she was like, "No." And I said, "All right, good. If it does, you don't need to see it. I'm not telling you not to watch it. I would prefer that you don't. What I am saying to you is that you do not need to see that." And we had a conversation about it. The question that she asked me was, she's like, "I'm not trying to be funny, mom, but like, why would they shoot a white woman? Why would I shoot a white woman?"
Wow.
And I was like, "I'm really glad that you asked me that question." I could tell she was like a little, not like embarrassed, but she was like, "I'm not trying to be fun. I know how that sounds." I was like, "Nope, no stupid questions. Why would I shoot a white woman?" Because, because this incident, I think, pulls back a curtain on what many of us already knew. This is not just about immigration. This is not, it is certainly like rooted in xenophobic and racist ideology, but it's not entirely about that. It's not even about the great replacement theory or any of that. This is about a broader mandate that this administration and the people who support it, like the Heritage Foundation, think that they have, to enact complete and total control. So their end goal is an authoritarian theocracy, point blank, period. They have told us this. They spelled it out in a 900 and something page document. At some point, they will escalate, as we saw Wednesday. They have. At some point, we knew they would escalate this beyond, because it's very, very difficult. We've talked about affordability, I think, in every episode that we've recorded so far this season. We've talked about this before. It's very, very difficult when people are concerned with how they're going to pay for childcare, how they're going to pay rent, how they're going to pay for medicine, how they're going to pay for food. It's very difficult for them to be concerned with things like geopolitics or ICE raids if they're not the target of ICE raids. But at some point, um, this escalates and it extends beyond the perceived targets, and it becomes about enacting complete and total control over people. And by the time that that happens, the euphemism, not euphemism, but like the analogy, like frogs in a pot of boiling water.
Yeah.
By the time what happened on Wednesday happens, and people start to wake up and realize that this isn't about illegal immigrants or illegal immigration, the mechanisms are already in place. And I think that's how I wanted to set the stage with that. And I don't want to like be the black pilled co-host, the one that's like super doomer about everything, but I also think we have to be realistic and we have to start being more strategic than we are and sort of gaming these things out. Um Renee Good was an obstacle. Doesn't matter that she was a white woman. She was an obstacle. She was an existential threat to their ability to operate. And so they removed the obstacle. And we don't know everything about what's happened in Portland so far, but I imagine that when those details start to come out, we will see a similar pattern. We will also probably hear the exact same explanation that we've heard in every other incident so far. Thinking about like the conservative reaction, the MAGA to this, I want to get your thoughts if you've seen or read anything, but two things immediately struck me. Um, Homeland Security has trodden out the exact same argument every single time, and it's been echoed by the press secretary. It's been echoed by the rest of the Trump administration. And we've seen it in a lot of other acts of like state violence and police brutality, right? It's always the same shit. The officer was in fear of their life, or the person who was murdered was trying to attack them, had a gun, whatever. We always end up finding out that shit is just not true. What is especially chilling to me this time is that in previous incidents, we've either had kind of shaky body cam footage or we've had other like eyewitness accounts or video come out after the fact, right? But we saw by the time Chrissy Nome got her ass in front of a podium, we had already seen 7 different angles. You know what I mean? So we knew. And they still fixed their face to tell us that she tried to run him over with her vehicle. He was in fear for his life. She hit him with her car. We know that's not true. We see his feet on the side of the vehicle. Like it's just, and it makes me think about this is maybe a little bit trite, but damn, if it's not the case, it makes me think about 1984. Like, so many of us in high school were forced to read 1984, and we were like, this is boring. None of this matters. Same way that when we were learning about the Monroe Doctrine in history, a lot of us had senioritis real bad, or we were,
Mm.
checking out. And then suddenly we're like, hold up. I didn't think I was going to have to use any of this shit. Anyway, in 1984, George Orwell, there's like a quote from the book, and he says, like, the party told you, not to believe what you see with your eyes and heard with your ears. That's exactly what this administration did. We're sitting there going, we saw it. And they're like, well, this is what happened. And then super, super quickly after that, if you go to the one place you should never go online, which is the comment section, we saw people parroting the exact same talking points.
That's
Like these supporters saying, like, oh, well, she should have complied. She should have done this, that, the other, whatever. It's bonkers. And what I really hope people pay attention to, if this isn't already in their field of awareness, what I really, especially white women, I'm not qualified to talk to a lot of audiences in this world, but one audience in which I am extremely qualified to speak to is white women. And so, what I want white women, especially, to pay attention to is the type of person who is in those comments. And I know there's a lot of bots on the internet. The internet is mostly bots at this point. Like, we know this, but go ahead and click on the profiles of the people who are saying these things. Who are they? Because I know what I've seen overwhelmingly across several different platforms, and it's white men who were saying she should have complied. She shouldn't have done this. She was a domestic terror. Like, just parroting those same talking points. Baby, your whiteness will not save you. It is not enough. It's never been enough. It's always been a lie. I'm going to pause. Thoughts, questions, comments, concern.
I have so much. Thank you for that. So I recently wrote something that I actually just haven't had a chance to edit and get done with, but it's currently at 1,998 words, and it's called "The Pro-Life Party is Actually Pro-Death," and it's kind of interesting how so much of what you just out is part of what I include in there, and there's some weaving together both of the state-sanctioned murders that we've seen in Minneapolis and Portland, and yes, the sheer disregard of international law that we've seen in Venezuela and across the Caribbean, not just in the last week, past couple of months. Quite a few things. I think where I'll lead off with is that I don't watch videos, people dying. I might be the only person that's somewhat engaged, politically literate, whatever. And I still haven't seen a video of George Floyd, for example. I don't watch them. As a matter of fact, the proliferation of these types of videos was one of the things that truly led me off of Twitter years ago. And so I maintain a Facebook presence for the sake of political clients and really just for the sake of being able to see that the posts are going up. It's to the point to where I make it clear to clients that I don't manage social media. Either social media is not, it's not. And this is where I'm agreed for that. There's also sort of the aspect of I'm a child. One of the reasons I don't watch videos is because I grew up listening to hip hop, and I grew up in predominantly sort of black and Latino space, and so I never needed to see the state abuse, murder, violate people digitally because I had enough instances of seeing it with my own eyes or having for my life daily. And so it seems as if, what George Floyd kind of did was kind of make at least me, folks like me, and other folks who may get involved in the movement or in some ways just engaged with our political social justice system, that perhaps there's a slither of hope here. But one of the lines I have parroted obnoxiously, really for the past 2 years, is that we had sort of the largest number of uprisings, largest number of protests, largest number of engagement, people in a very sort of quote unquote peaceful way. We can get to that a little bit later. But 2020 was the pandemic year, and it was the year of protests and of demanding sort of equality under and by the law. Those two things will always be connected together, right? We had COVID and people took to streets in mass. And the only thing I remember happening as a result of that is they renamed Aunt Jemima to Pearl Milliken. We asked folks, hey, all we want is for you to stop killing us. We're not demanding, marching, asking for reparations. We're not demanding that a country that claims to be Christian make atonement for their sins. We are not demanding a complete and exhaustive collapse of the capitalistic system which requires sort of marginalized and oppressed people to continue to stay marginalized and oppressed violently, intentionally. We're not asking for any of that. All we're asking is that people to whom we pay taxes, to whom we fund, hey, bro, stop killing us. And all we got was a change in the pancake.
Well, I'd also like to point out that they did take a knee in the rotunda in kente cloth, okay? All right? Before you say all you got was a syrup bottle, all right? You also got Nancy Pelosi
Ain't
in
nobody in
decidedly not her color scheme, if we're being real. Sorry, it's not funny. It's not funny, but that was
so
like the first thing I thought of. I was like, God,
it's okay. You gotta laugh through it. You gotta, laugh at my pain. That's why can't learn stand up. So like I would love to say I'm surprised by any of this stuff. I think what happens is so two things. One, to tie this all together, we did all that, and one of the things I spent the entirety of last year parroting, and people didn't believe this, and I'll link the show notes. 2024 was one of the deadliest years of police killings in the United States in history. More people died at the hands of police in the United States of America in 2024 than ever before in recorded. I would, if I were a betting man, I would bet that once we get 2025 data, that number will be higher. And so, what this does, what this tells me, is that after a sort of sizable and substantial movement in which people from all swaths of life, from all races, ethnicities, backgrounds, sexual orientations, and races, came together and said, "Hey, we demand change," and we went out and put out very specific policy things to be enacted, like the removal of qualified immunity. Not even saying, hey, take all money away from police, but stop surplus spending so that they don't have access to be able to buy additional tanks and paramilitary equipment that urban police environments just don't need. Right? This is for guerrilla warfare, not for quote unquote police citizens in your country. We got none of that. Actually, what we got was more people dying at the hands of police and police officers away with it, and more coffers funded by local taxpayer money going to settlements while police go home and retire and make jokes about the number of bullets that they put inside it. All right. And so what the what the murder of Renee Good sort of signals to me, and tell me if I'm getting ahead a little bit, but this is what I this is Sandy Hook. And let me be clear about what I'm saying. I'm not equating sort of the state sanctioned murder of one individual to the tragedy that took place at that school where a number of young children were murdered by a gunman. I'm not equating those in terms of sort of impact and the tragedy, the trauma that comes. What I mean by that, though, is when I look back retrospectively, and I think a lot of us, and I don't even think this is the benefit of hindsight. I think after about 5 or 6 months, when we knew Congress wasn't going to take action, those of us who were alive and conscious at that moment knew the gun debate was for all intents and purposes, we had decided that yes, kid dying at school from close range of being shot by rifles was okay. All right, we got a long way to go there. I'm gonna just say, if we're letting white women die, none of us have any hope. I was about to try to dress that up real diplomatically, but like there's even for somebody like me, excuse me, who gets, I don't get pulled over a lot, but it's regular enough. And I've had my instances with law enforcement and so on and so forth. There's even a sense of, and we won't say this, but I'm gonna just put words to something. There's even a sense of all that stuff of, oh, if you comply, you're okay, and you do your yes sir and your no sir and all this other stuff. You like to think that there is some level of justification, right, of truth to that. All right. If I put my hands on this wheel and make sure they're showing, have my ID and my wallet already out, or if I you know get ass out of here in the event that this sort of police officer comes in a protest. Right? You like to think all these different tropes that we talk about preserving your life and preservation and making yourself not a threat to law enforcement, that they will work. But one of the things that you'll notice, that even amongst people who are sort of living lives that we would consider lives of criminality, for example. I don't have time to go into the pedagogy there, but we'll use this as an example. Right? Like even homeboy on the block knows you don't kill no white woman. That comes with a different level of prosecution. It comes with different heat. The consequences to killing a white woman are different than killing another nigga out here. I'm just going to be real right? And so there is a crumbling of the veil when a middle-aged white woman, who I think is also a mother, who also was also a mother, when the state, one, can kill her, two, have a complete apparatus around it with access to media and culture to justify it without any evidence or any facts to back it up almost immediately. Third, when the leader of that paramilitary state, in almost an instant, goes out and puts out a diatribe of why that woman deserved to die. That's three. And then four, when you got a bunch of minions who are willing to follow this cult leader to their death, get to that in a minute. Then it's like, okay, none of this is real if we are letting that kind of person. Because the protection, preservation of a person who looks like her is what most of American violence contemporarily and historically has always been about. And if we have lost the plot to the point that we let that type of individual be murdered by the state with impunity, there is no one who is listening or watching this who the same thing can happen. I am not a marching or protest person. I don't march or protest. Part of that is I got asthma. Yeah, let's be honest. All right,
Y'all seen how much inhalers cost out of here?
inhalers are expensive. You pepper spray a nigga, I might be hurt for a long time. The other, I'm just being real. I ain't marching. I can't get pepper sprayed. I got asthma. All right? The other, the other reason is I've just developed the ethos around how I feel convicted to um, sort of bring about liberation in the way I see fit. However, all that being said, as soon as I get back home, I'm finding, I'm finding I'm finding a protest, I'm finding something that very visibly and physically puts me and many other people I know out in the streets. This is one of those instances to where the response from folks who still believe in this American experiment, who still believe in the so-called rule of law, who still have any inclination that this place can live up to the word of creeds that it says it should live up to. This is the one time where you need to put your shoes on and get your ass outside. Because if they can do it to that woman, you are next and no one.
Yeah, not you could be, you are. You are next. And if not next, then you next. Like yeah, I agree. Yeah. That was really well said. There's no I am not one to tell people if they're willing to take an action, often for the first time. I'm not one to tell people, well, that's not, yeah, get out in March, I guess, but what does that do? Like I've got my own thoughts about when marches and rallies and things like that are effective tactics versus when they're not. It seems to be the default tactic. I find that ineffective in the schema of a broader liberatory movement, period. However, if that's never been them and they saw what happened on Wednesday and they're like, oh, I'm outside. I'm with it. I'm with it because you got to take that first step. That's not where I'm at anymore. But even I know when it's time to put my shoes on and be like, all right, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. Anyway, I don't remember what the thought I was going to finish that thought with was, but irrelevant. All that to say, I am with you. Oh, it was this. We can't march our way out of this. We can't protest sign our way out of this. We can't vote our way out of this.
It's too late for that. We voted our way in it.
You better say that shit. We did vote. We did vote, folks. Speaking of voting, I want to talk very quickly before we kind of talk about the ways to organize around this. If Kat and Fred are sitting here telling you like March, I guess, then we better come up with some other things for you, right? And we're going to. But we talked about this administration's response. We talked about response in the conservative movement. I want to talk about Democratic reaction to this for just a second. Listen. Here's the thing. We did see the strongest response thus far that we have seen to state-sanctioned murder on Wednesday when the mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Frey, got behind a podium and said the only appropriate thing to say in this moment. So here's what Jacob Frey said at the press conference, the very first one that he gave on Wednesday.
Getting killed. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
There is no other response that you should be having to this. And then later, Governor Walz got on and said a very Governor Walz version of that, which was to say, when America's dad got on and, when I feel like I'm in a little bit more of a joking mood, I want to talk about this man deciding not to run for re-election. But that's next week or the week after. That's not this week. And what like a bitch move I think that is, but whatever. He gets up there and says, here's the deal. If y'all I already told our National Guard, not yours, ours. I already told our National Guard that it's up. So if you want to keep playing with us, we can go. Mm-hmm. That is the only response that any elected official should be having to this, and not even couching it in the same sort of language that we use over and over and over again. No, if you are the steward of a city that is being terrorized by the American Gestapo or brown shirts or whatever you want to call them, the only acceptable thing to do is to get behind a podium with as many cameras as you can get in front of you and say, get the fuck out. These people are not playing. The social contract is broken. These people are not playing by any type of rules at all anymore. They're making the shit up as they go along. And we have to bring that exact same energy. To that point, my advice to people, if you live in a city or a state or all of those things where you've got Democratic elected officials, this is what you should be demanding from them. And then you better be demanding that the actions that they take back that up. The Tennessee Democratic Party, which is my state party, finally trotted out the extremely popular position, fuck ICE. They posted on their Facebook page a cute little graphic they made Wednesday afternoon. And it says, we want to make one thing crystal clear. Fuck ICE. That's great, Tennessee Dems. Love this energy. However, 23 federal agencies plus the National Guard have occupied my city since September of 2025. DHS, HSI and ICE have always had a much more elevated presence in Memphis at any given point under any administration than other parts of the state, certainly, and other parts of the country, with the exception of maybe border towns. My question is, if that's the case, and it is, if we know that since the Memphis Safe Task Force started, there have been over 40,000 traffic stops, if we know that hundreds of people have been taken into custody, why did it take a white woman being murdered in Minneapolis for the Tennessee Democratic Party to say fuck ICE? So my question is, what does fuck ICE look like in action inside of the state of Tennessee right now? If that's really the energy, and they can't, and don't accept this from anyone either, because I'm not accepting it from them. If that's the official position of the state party, then positions are typically positions because there is policy to back it up. So what are we doing? Like, that has to be the energy that people are coming with. And that energy has to endure through really, really boring procedural things like budget season. Budgets are moral contracts. Every city, every county, every state has a budget. All budgets at all levels include something for public safety. Public safety includes the fucking cops. So let's see some. What are we trying to do here?
No, I mean, you make it that's a good point. One of them is around sort of the collapse of the social contract and the social order. As you mentioned, that does not exist anymore. Doesn't exist anymore. One of the things I write in the article is just, sort of end of our civility, at least in our American discourse. I correlate that with the time when Doug Trump sort of came down the escalator and announced that he was running for president. Literally nothing has been the same since then. And some people are really like, oh, well, America has always been this imperialist, colonialist, hyper militarist society. I'm not arguing any of that. All of that is true. However, what I don't want to get lost in what has happened recently is the belief that, okay, because the veil has been lifted, that there's no resistance for us to offer, and that there is nothing to build upon from a political order that at least has stability within. And so, what that means in layman's terms is that the previous President Obama, for example, was like any other American president. There was state sanctioned violence. There were imperialist interests that were on behalf of the United States and its corporations, military, that were upon. We're not arguing against that. However, the tens, if not hundred thousands, if millions of lives are preserved, protected, defended, and killed when there is at least a stability in the American diplomatic discourse. What that does is it enables some things to happen and other things. And what we've sort of permitted to occur now is a day and age to where the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security is so and is so comfortable without any briefing, without any understanding or examination of what happened. Oh, someone was in their car and and law enforcement person shot them. Okay, this is our own civil war against people who are in America. There's nothing that anyone who's wearing a badge or a law enforcement uniform can do wrong. Therefore, here we talk for so on and so forth. I was going to say that violence begets violence. And one of the things that's frustrating me about Democrats is the fallacy that there is something to be had, something to be gained, something to be accomplished by not getting in the. I absolutely love and adore Michelle Obama. Wonderful human. I've always detested that when they go low, we go. I do not believe it. That day and age is over. Perhaps it was the America of 2008. It is not the America of 2026. I love Jacob Frey's response on Tim Wall's response, if for no other reason. You've got your little so-called ICE agents who you sort of rammed through and recruited from the depths of podcast bros and the crunchy socks in the basement. Cool. I got an excellently trained National Guard. who will deplenish your recently hired little ice boys in a matter of days, if not shorter than that. So if you want to do the whole I'm a tough guy, I got big guns too, we can do that. All right. And the folks I got in my disposal are much better trained, much better soldiers, and much better warriors than you. Now I know that comes incredibly stereotypical, man. But I do think there is a level of this language, this approach, whereby sort of this administration has to be met. I'm tying this up into one more because a part of the conservative response, and this just goes to affirm, I think everything we insofar as nothing and no one will protect you. This happened to Renee Good. It can happen to you. This is from an op-ed written by Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times, where she proclaimed, "quote In the imagination of some on the right, Good quickly came to stand in all the grating resistance moms they'd like to see crushed. Fox News sneered that Good was a quote self-proclaimed poet. She's the winner of the prestigious poetry award. Pronouns in her bio." The conservative radio host Erickson, who I think ran for U.S. in Georgia, described it as quote, awful, which stands for affluent, white, female, urban, liberal. The other thing that really stands, and this is what should continue to sort of haunt everyone, is the response from Texas Representative Steve Hunt, to where he said, quote, "The bottom line is this. A federal officer gives you instructions, you abide by them, and then you get to keep your life, unquote." See, this is core of what these sadistic, evil, straight from the depths of hell, do not care about anyone but themselves, have no moral compass, individuals think, right? Insofar as they claim to be pro-life, and they very open in their affirmation that only if you do what people who think and look like us tell you, you're deserving of continuing to live. The emperor hadn't had clothes for a while, but now it's just
Yeah. I want to point out, we talked earlier about we got ourselves all twisted up several years ago, many years ago now, over this idea of like, well, they should have just complied. They should have just complied. They should have just complied. All right, hold on. If if the if the understanding, so if the social contract is about if you obey the orders of the state to a T, you might get to live. So we're clear, that's tyranny. That is literally what tyranny is. That is fascism. That is literally what fascism. That is literally authoritarianism. And so years ago, they trotted this bullshit line out, and it made very reasonable people, very some might refer to them as moderates,
moderate.
centrists, reasonable thinking individuals go, "Oh, there was another police murder today. Well, what happened? Did he move too fast?" And that's when all of these questions started coming out. Well, let's look at this angle. Let's look at this angle. No, bitch. You're manufacturing consent for fascism. That's not what we should be examining. And so here's where we are right now today, January 9th, 2026. I don't want to say it's too late because quite honestly, that's probably going to demotivate a lot of people. But what I will say is if we don't decidedly put this down now, right now, we're cooked. We're done. I don't know how to make people understand this right now in this moment. This is the most free that we will ever be again unless we collectively make the decision to get free together. That's it. There's no, we'll wait and see. There's no red line. The red line was crossed. It was crossed years ago, but for a lot of people, it was crossed on Wednesday. So what are we going to do? What can people do? Love that segue.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way, and I'm gonna leave most of this section to you, and we're gonna talk about Venezuela in the next episode. So yeah, look out for that. We'll tie some of this together. I think so. One of the things I do pretty often, I'm a weirdo like this, but I listen to speeches, just for fun, while I'm working out or walking or going for a walk. And I listen to Martin Luther King Jr.'s last sermon once a month, if not more than that. And then one of the things, sometimes I find my breaking out just random into, maybe if I lived in China or somewhere like that, then I wouldn't sort of have this commitment, this devotion to holding you folks accountable. Right? But somewhere I read the freedom for simple, somewhere I read, and I think for me, one of the things that keeps me being a greater fool is, and I actually sort of had this sort of reckoning, contemplation over the break because I watched Ken Burns' documentary on the American Rep. And this is, I guess, where some of the hopeful aspect comes from. At least is that there is a reality in the fact that the ideals expressed in the founding of this country, they are truly unique in the course of human history, and they are truly lawful, and they are truly sort of, they truly stand in a lofty, distant mirror that no other sort of found really claim to have. I think that probably challenge combating American exceptionalism because objectively, who and what we claim to be, and how or what claims came about, where they came from, is truly a remarkable story worth having reverence for. The problem is we've never actually to things in the way that we said that. And so, in terms of how we go about organizing or combating, I would say number one is to, at every turn, you mentioned this idea of, oh, okay, I want to rip us from that, right? Insofar as complying does not then give life value or worth. We hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The right that you have to life does not come from an ICE agent. It does not come from a U.S. senator. It does not come from the President of the United States. It comes from something or someone far off that not even you or I can comprehend. Even someone who claims to know the divinity and the mysteries of God. I got a master's in it, right? It comes from something or someone or something that's, even if you don't even believe in a higher power, there is not something that we can talk about in measuring words that can part the level of worthiness that comes from the preservation of your life, any human being or anything else that's mortal. All right. Our documents say that.
Come on, Pastor.
The documents we say we believe say that. And so I don't give a damn if somebody doesn't come. All right. What I want to commit my life to is the removal of a term justifiable homicide. No such thing as justifiably killing anyone by the state. That's a different conversation. All right. Hold true, or hold rather, to those truth that all of us are created equal, and we do actually have those unalienable rights. So once we have that, two, these other sort of narratives that come along with that. Right. One of the things that I'm doing now is I'm working with a group of pastors in Baltimore, and ICE agent or ICE facilities rather aren't letting people in. They aren't letting folks communicate with their family. But on the list of things that are happening that are defying or breaking or just flat out not honoring these people's constitutional right. Two folks are allowed in these facilities, lawyers and members of clergy. And so if you have any association to any of those, what I mean by that is if you are someone who's a deacon or a lay leader or anything like that, you are in a prime position to reach out to local organizers in your city if ICE is there, see what any steps you might need to take in order to be sort of approved to enter into ICE facilities. I'm not sure if it requires you to be, a diocese or a canon or convention or anything like that. If you know what those words I just mentioned mean, then great. You'll know sort of the first steps look out to. But surprisingly, you're allowed in. Lawyers, folks, if you are out there and you've got a law degree, even if you're not practicing, or bar, license act, this is the time to go back to pay the money to take the bar exam to get reactive, whatever it is. We are entering into a time where a lot of these battles are going to start taking place. They already are in the courts. In the same way, I think our last line of defense this year is getting out and organizing and combating and making sure that we have a very solid and tangible and physical response to this that says, hey, no, you've definitely crossed the line. I had feelings about that because I don't think killing people and Hispanic folks is okay either. But anyway, it's okay. Cool. But it's also happening in the courts, at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, and more people are just going to need affordable legal representation. This is going to be a time actually to where if you do have a legal background, you may need to work your 9 to 5 to 6 and then go do bail hearing, or then help people find bail money, or then go help people do immigrant, whatever it might be. If you have that background and experience, I am talking to you. You have an obligation to go out and work on that. Last thing I'll say, and I will set up for this entire episode, is went somewhere to a conference in November. Forgot what it was. Thing was saying it was a lady talking at the end of it. She gave a great talk. I don't remember what it was about, but it was great. But I don't remember what it was about because of this last. And she said, if you were alive right now, you never have to worry about what you would have done during the civil rights movement, because what you are doing now is what you would have done in 1960. And so this is whatever time in history you have read about or dreamed about or thought about or had nightmares about or wondered, would I rise to the challenge? Would I be courageous and old enough to end up on the right side of history? You don't need to dream of that anymore. This is that moment. You are living in it. You have a responsibility to help do whatever it is you can, however long you can, to help make this union more better. Because I'm not even going to say
Listen, I haven't been to church in a long time, but I do feel like I do feel like I peeked in the door a little bit. I would go to your church. I would go to your church.
you're welcome.
Yeah. I think that's really good information about the lawyers and clergy. I don't even think I was aware of all of that. So now I've got people that I'm going to talk to after this and be like, "Hey, you still active?"
If not, you better pay that money. Time to go to work.
That's right. But I do know a lot about other stuff. And so if you are not in those two groups of people, then you're like, well, shit, I guess I can't do anything. It ain't wrong. In most places now, there are mutual aid and or rapid response organizations active right now doing this work. You should join one of them or multiple, as many as you can, as many as you have time for. And then if you don't have any of those near you, you should start it. So there's like layers of preparedness that I think people need to start to acclimate themselves to an understanding of. And we can talk more about what preparedness really looks like, but there's like an individual level of preparedness and then there's community preparedness. And that doesn't always look like rapid response, but rapid response is a part of that. Maybe we can talk more about like economic and like resource preparedness when we get into Venezuela, because I think we'll end up talking about what we think economically the implications of that will be for us. Listen, and yeah,
Interconnected.
they are absolutely interconnected. People need to strap in. But because I'm based in Memphis, because Memphis is in the state of Tennessee, I know the organizations around me the best. So I'm going to very quickly give some free promotion to there's an organization in Memphis called Free the 901. It is a coalition organization. They are working and organizing specifically around responses to the Memphis Safe Task Force, as well as other things that sort of pop up. And then also Vecindarios 901 is a local organization that does both rapid response and mutual aid specifically for our migrant kin in town, but also anybody that just isn't white, because I can't stress enough, they are doing this shit to people who they just think they like look at them or hear them and they're like, yeah, you probably don't belong here. So
Hmm.
Vecindarios 901 does really incredible work. They're doing a lot to keep the community informed about what agencies are where at what time and how many and what's going on, which helps people literally plan their day. You know, do I need to take an alternative route today?
Yeah.
Great. You know, and then there's the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, who continues to do incredible work and has done for a long time. So those are things here that people can join now. Or if you're not here, you can look at those organizations and go, cool, how did they set this up? What are they doing? Right? You can start your own. We'll put it in the show notes maybe, but if you're like, I'm going to start my own stuff, I don't know how to do this, where do I start? Great. I've got a quick start guide for you. Dean Spade, I think, is one of my favorite voices currently about mutual aid and horizontal organization. Dean Spade is also, I don't know if he's still an active lawyer, but has also done a lot of work about like legal aid, especially. So that's really cool. It kind of hits both. He wrote a very short book, very, very short, all killer, no filler. You can finish it in an afternoon. It's called Mutual Aid. If you're the type of nerd that I am, and you really are into like deep, I don't even think it's that deep, but like leftist theory throughout history, then you might enjoy a title also called Mutual Aid, but by Peter Kropotkin, who was a famous Russian anarchist. You'll say to yourself, this was written in the 19th century. This is not applicable. That's absolutely not true. I also think that We Do This Till We Free Us by Mariam Kaba is an essential work to understand why abolition is the only way.
Yeah.
We can't reform our way out of this. But I know you've read it, so you know exactly what I mean when I say, like, I think it is the essential first step that people should, that's the entry point for understanding why abolition is the only way, I think, in my opinion, humble opinion for what it's worth. And then, you know, beyond that stuff that like carries us into current day, like 2 podcasts that I really enjoy aside from this one are It Could Happen Here, which is all about preparedness. And then there's another one, actually Live Like the World Is Dying is the one that's really about like preparedness. And then It Could Happen Here does a broad swath of things. They did an episode, I think it was like before the pandemic even, that talked about what a second civil war in America could look like and the things that would start it. And I think that's what got a lot of people like turned on to them. But they've since done a lot of really incredible episodes helping people understand like, you know, the state at play. So those would be like my like that's my quick start guide to starting your own, like understanding theory and practice. And then I mean, if we can still find it, because it was taken down, but I'm pretty sure that places have preserved it. If people haven't read Project 2025, I feel really strongly.
Yeah.
I feel really strongly that you should commit yourself to reading all 942 pages because I did. And if I remember correctly, we're about 65% of the way through that book now, right now, right now. So that's me. That's what I got. And also like I don't know everything. I'm not the world's greatest organizer. I'm not even like actively organizing right now. I'm just supporting where I can. But contact information in the show notes. You can find me on my Substack, in the comments at YouTube, on TikTok, whatever. My DMs are always open if people have questions and want to talk things through. That's that's what I got.
I mean, we really about that life, man. So you somewhere and you're figuring out, hey, where do I start? Check out resources, and you just want to know some other things. Like definitely, we are incredibly honest and mean it when we say, reach out. We quite a bit of experience across spectrums from marketing to digital organizing, organizing. I've worked in movement spaces myself. Before. I've gone to private institutions that there are connections to both academic and monetary resources. This is not just the labor of an education, but also one. Hey, not only am I better that I learned something, but also I know some action. If you will allow me to sort of end the show, I want to make sure I get those words from the Declaration of Independence right, because these are the things that all of this, when I just blow on it, is all of this, everything we talked about today, between ICE, between the administration, between Secretary, so on and so forth. All of these things, it's from founding, from the execution, from the establishment of this document that we say we uphold and that we say we care about. And these are the words that we are inevitably to be accountable to and for. Whenever it feels like that's the case, whenever it feels like that's whenever it feels like those things apply to some or apply for some and not others, I think we have a collective. And we've done it before. Slavery was legal here for a long time. didn't have the right all time. Never less than. Well, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal and women. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty. So from that, forth, wherever you see people seem to have right, life, liberty, do something that can make that. Politics is usual.
See you next week, man.
It's don't sue me. Don't sue me for calling you something.